Welcome to the Who You Know Job Networking Show, where it's not always about what you know, but who you know can make all the difference in your career search, business, relationships, and life. Take a deep dive into the growth mindset it takes to persevere in seemingly hopeless situations as our unbelievable hosts and guests share with you how they've overcome failure to reach success and specific strategies they use to transform and dominate in their respective fields. On this episode of the Who You Know Show, Richard Miles.
I refer to our system as a criminal legal system because legally everything that was done to me was right except for they had the wrong person. A murder happened, an APB went out, a suspect was arrested, he was interrogated, they gave him an attorney, he went to jury trial, a jury heard him, found him guilty, we're legal. No, I'm innocent, so there's no justice.
Let's go to this week's Executive Spotlight. Each week, we'll be interviewing the top entrepreneurs and executives and companies sharing their personal playbook to success and the lessons they've learned along the way. Richard Miles was wrongfully incarcerated for murder and attempted murder at the age of 19, but fully exonerated 17 and a half years later in 2012. Upon receiving his compensation for wrongful incarceration from the state of Texas, he seeded Miles of Freedom, which provides holistic services for individuals, families, and communities impacted by incarceration.
If I can get a warm Who You Know welcome for Richard Miles Jr. Richard, before we get into your mission and miles of freedom in your business, right? Please tell me your story, because it says here that you were wrongfully incarcerated for murder and attempted murder at the age of 19 and fully exonerated 17 and a half years later in 2022.
Yes. So first and foremost, thank you, Trevor, for this opportunity, the stage. I'm loving the energy. So my name is Richard Miles from Dallas, Texas. And at the age of 19, I was wrongfully incarcerated for murder and attempted murder. I grew up in Oak Cliff. I jokingly say I grew up under the church. My dad was a bishop. He still is the bishop. He passed 6 months before I got out. Mom, a school teacher, went to Skyline High School, Longfellow Academy. And, at the age of 18, once I graduated, I'm working at McDonald's, and I told my mom, and I was like, hey, man, I'm finished with school. I was getting ready to go to TSTC in Waco for plastics engineering. And I was like, man, give me that opportunity to go out on my own. Gave me that opportunity, and within a year of me being gone from home, one day, my friend drove me from Oak Cliff back to North Dallas, is where I stayed at on the corner of Cresthaven and Bluffview. He was going over his girlfriend's house that stayed on the corner of University and Roper. And so if you know anything about North Dallas, it's like literally right around the corner. Paid my friend $5, got out the car, Trevor, and it was the longest walk of my life. I walked up University to Lemon Avenue, Love Field Airport, Sewell Cadillac Shops, Bluffview intersects with Lemon Avenue, and it's a Red Coleman liquor store that sits right there on the corner. Stopped there, called my friend. I said, hey, it's late. Can you cut the alarm off and unlock the door? My friend James answered the phone, did as I asked. Across the street, there was a police car sitting right there at the corner. Didn't pay any attention, passed by the police car. Next thing I heard was a helicopter. So I'm 19, I'm walking, I look up, I say, well, something has happened in this neighborhood. I'm steady walking in from nowhere. Police cars came from everywhere, and they was, get on the ground. So laying on the ground, they handcuffed me, asked me where the gun was at. I told them I didn't know anything, didn't know what they was talking about. They put me in a police car and took me to a Texaco that was right in front of Bachman Lake. Took me out the back of the police car, and I'm looking around and I'm seeing police cars and ambulances, and they put some stuff on my hands. I later learned there was a gunshot residue test. Took me to Capers, which is crimes against persons downtown, and I gave the detective that night 5 phone numbers of everybody who I was with. Gave him the phone number of my girlfriend, the guy that drove me from Oak Cliff to North Dallas, the friend that I stayed with, his mom. The detective went out, came back about 6 hours later. He said, well, Richard, your story checked out. He said, but we have a witness that say they saw you kill one person and shoot another person. So you're going to be arraigned for murder and attempted murder. And so I always thought the first phone call that I would make back home to my mom was, hey, man, you know, McDonald's has been great. I'm on my way to TSTC. But that call that I made was to tell my mom and dad that I was in Louisville County Jail on a bond for $350,000 for a crime that I had no knowledge of.
Wow. So one of the things that I just have to ask you, because your story is so descriptive, like I'm visualizing the whole scene. You must have replayed that night for 17 and a half years.
Oh, yeah.
If you know, I was in. We was talking about PTSD earlier, and some people refer to a wrongful incarceration, or just even take COVID, right? Because a lot of people may not be able to relate to prison, but we have all been incarcerated these past 2 years, right? And so, what did you do in that time frame? You know, we were all wrongfully incarcerated. We were exercising and everything, and they said, "Get in the house." So, what do you do now, right? And so, for me, going into the jail and then eventually to our Texas prison every day, Trevor, it was like, okay, somebody's going to come today. Somebody's going to come tomorrow. And so that persistence of thought and hope, it grinds slow.
Well, that's what I want to ask you.
Yes.
Because, yeah, the rejection of every day, you're thinking it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's going to happen. And I mean, like you said, it grinds slow. Yeah. Like, how did you overcome that? How did you get through that?
So it's a couple of things. The first and foremost thing, I overlooked it growing up, but church, my spirituality, really knowing who I was. My dad emphasized that so much. But while I was incarcerated, a couple of things happened. I got 60 years, I'm 20 years old. They put me on the bus. I leave Dallas in 1995. And I get to Cofield Unit. All of my time I did on Cofield Unit. Cofield is one of the biggest prisons in Texas, houses over 5,000 people on this one unit. And they take me to the barber shop to get my hair cut, and I meet a guy that's cutting hair. His name is Benjamin Spencer. And Ben is cutting hair, and he's dialoguing and conversing with everybody, and he's asking, where are you from? How much time do you have? And when the conversation gets to me, I say, man, you know, I'm from Dallas. I got 60 years for a murder I don't know nothing about. Ben looks at me. He said, if you're really innocent, he said, I'm innocent as well. Ben just got out last year after doing 34 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. But what Ben did was, Ben gave me the address to Centurion Ministries, which is an innocence organization in Princeton, New Jersey. Centurion is the only organization that works on non-DNA cases. And so before my case is the first non-DNA, no confession case in the state of Texas. It's never been a case like mine before. But had Ben not shared that resource with me, right? We're here to share resources, right? That's what we're
who
here.
you know, who you know in prison. I mean, it's in your life, your business, your career, everything.
Never, you should never overlook a person because of the situation you're in.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so I connected with Ben. Ben gave me the address. I went to my cell 1997 and wrote my first letter to this innocence organization. And I received a very generic letter back stating, due to the overwhelming responses of claims of actual innocence, it takes a minimum of 10 years before we're able to get on your case. But it was hoping that because the system that we trusted in had gave me 60. You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Right.
And so here I am, some people in Princeton, New Jersey believes in my innocence, and they say that they can work with me in 10 years. And coupled with that.
When did that happen? Well, like, at what timeline did that happen? Was it the first year? Was it year 5? Like, what time?
Oh, no.
When did that letter come back?
So I got the letter back pretty quickly. I'm going to say within a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Centurion sent that letter back. But behind that letter, I wrote multiple colleges. This was around the time when Marbury Povich, all the shows that was out. I'm writing all these people and got very few letters back. And so that one letter that I did get back, you know what they say, delay is not denial, right? And so that one letter that I give back, it helped me to hold on to hope. Fast forward, Ben encourages me. We talked about earlier, when you're thinking about a job, you don't just sit there. Ben encouraged me. He said, your direct appeal is going to get denied. He said, that's just how the system is. So in Texas, if you go to jury trial, you lose your jury trial, you get a direct appeal. Your direct appeal is sometimes done by a court-appointed attorney. We were straight court-appointed. We didn't have the resources to hire a free world attorney, so that's one of the obstacles in my situation. And Ben tells me, he said, you need to go to the law library. He said, because you're going to be time bored. He said, and if you don't get into the law library to get on top of your case, I said, I've never been to law school. He said, you got to learn.
Wow.
He said, you got to learn.
So can I ask you this? So it
Yes.
sounds like he was in a similar situation. He had already been there,
Yes.
done that. He had gone through this process himself,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And he was sharing with you the system and the formula
Yes.
to get where you're here today.
And as much as I hated to hear those words, you're going to lose your direct appeal, I had to deal with my reality. So I went to the law library, and in the library, I met another guy, innocent, Ricky Wyatt. Ricky Wyatt did 32 years in prison.
Wow.
Ricky Wyatt helps me file my writ of habeas corpus 1107. We send my writ of habeas corpus in. we didn't have the money for my transcripts, and so my writ was done without the extra record evidence. Court of Criminal Appeals denied it due to that fact, and so I began to literally grow up in prison. And so my direct appeal was denied in 2001. Centurion Ministries picked up my case in 2007. So by the time they picked up my case, I had did 13 years in prison, going in at the age of 19 and them picking up my case at the age of 33, around 33. That's how old I was.
So let me ask you this, Richard, because you're at state, right? You're in the pen, and that's not easy. I mean, it's just downright dangerous, right? And here you are, an innocent kid, child, really, at that age. And you've got these kind of carrots, right, that are keeping you going. They're dangled out there. How do you not get sucked into that penitentiary lifestyle? Stay positive, because, we're talking gangs, we're talking, everything.
Everything.
Right?
What does it say? We're in the world, but we're not of the world.
That's right.
You see, so we're going to be put in situations, and once again, you got to know who you are, right? And it goes back to my upbringing. It goes back to what my dad and my mom was instilling in me, which didn't change because my freedom was taken away from me. You see what I'm saying? And the other thing is, I did 15 years in prison for a crime that I did not commit, on a unit that was one of the most harshest units in the state of Texas. But every altercation I got into was because of something I did. So there is a misconception about individuals incarcerated. The vast majority of men that I met had found a place of redemption within prison, and they just needed an opportunity to prove to society that they had been changed. And it wasn't from any type of rehabilitative programs that was implemented or anything like that. It was just this point of you are at your lowest. Right. Whether it's by an action that you've done or by an injustice that was done upon you. And so I think it was the strength in everybody that was around me, that allowed me to see that it's still hope in this situation.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. So one of the things, actually tell me, when you were released, tell me that story.
Yeah.
And what did that feel like when you finally were exonerated of all this?
Right. So let's go back to the night when I was arrested. I had just bought a beeper. So I'm going to bring some context into the situation, because I just bought a beeper at the age of 19. I remember it was an NEC beeper, and it said bleep, 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 bleep.
Fast big time, Rich.
Right. I just got a beeper. And so fast forward, I get out of prison and they give me my beeper back.
Wow.
Hey, this is 2012. This is 2012.
I'm going to take the mic back for that.
So I get out of prison.
That's messed up.
I get my beeper back, but everybody else has iPhones. And like I see everybody, and I'm like, I went to prison, there was no trains in Dallas. But now I get out and they're talking about, well, if you want to get a job, you got to catch the green line to the yellow line to the blue line. And I'm like, oh, all I caught was the 15 Ramona Singing Hills. I'm from Oak Cliff. You know, I'm from
Turner.
Yeah, you know, that's all these other trains, you know. And so when you're talking about coming out of prison, you got technology, you got geographical changes. But here's something else. In male prisons, you can't talk to women. There is no dialogue between a man and a woman in prison. And so the ability for me to talk to women was overbearing because from the age of 19 to 34, you can't say, oh, you look nice today. You're going to be in segregation because they feel like you're fraternizing with officers. And so we got to understand the mentality that's imposed upon individuals that are incarcerated and those barriers that will be constantly in place. You're sitting in front of an employer and it's a woman. And the only thing you can think about is you haven't been able to articulate your emotions or your feelings right. And so it's misperceived in that moment. And for me, it was just Trevor really embracing my handicaps. I was physically handicapped. I was emotionally handicapped. I was spiritually grounded. And I was, geographically lost, just lost from that context. But I was blessed to still have my mom. My dad had passed 6 months before I got out. He passed of cancer. And one of the things was, those dreams that you have in prison, how, when you get out, you want to do this and you want to do that. And this is the male figure in my life. And I know I can generate energy from this person. And when that person is gone, what do you do? Well, it wasn't all on that person. That person had the energy that you needed. That energy and that spirit is still here, but can you still move on when that person is gone? And so for me, it was just really coming out, being blessed to have my freedom because I left being in there.
Right.
I left a whole bunch of innocent people in there. Studies say it's about 10% of America's prison population is innocent. If you go to the Innocence Project website, it's over 2,300 individuals that's been wrongfully incarcerated.
Well, and that's what we want to talk about too. Is your company, Miles of Freedom?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you got out, and at what time did you start your company, Miles of Freedom? And talk to us about you. You just had your 10th year anniversary of Miles of Freedom.
This is our 10 years right now. This is 10 years now.
10 year anniversary.
It's 10 years now.
So tell us what that is and what's your mission of this company what are you doing?
Yeah, so when I got out of prison, first thing I did, I couldn't get a job because I wasn't exonerated. And so I'm walking around talking to job employees, and I got newspaper articles in my back pocket because I'm perceived as a murderer. Wow. I'm not perceived as a job seeker. Wow. I'm perceived as an ex-convict. Right?
Right.
And so I'm walking around with all these newspapers in my back pocket trying to get a job. And just so happened, a man that was ordained as a minister at our church worked at the Hilton Garden Inn off of Wycliffe. And he said, man, I'm going to create a job for you. And so he created a banquets position. And so I was the one that was over all banquets, setting up tables, every meeting that went down at the Hilton, I did it. And I loved that job. One guy told me, he said, why you come to work smiling every day? I said, when you didn't work for a system that don't pay you, you'll come to work smiling every day. Because
when you get paid.
Because for so long in prison, I worked for free.
Right.
So once again, there's a psyche that people that work in prison every day that's not compensated, you feel like your hands don't create value. That's why when people come home from prison, it's hard for them to get a job because they have never been shown that their hands create value. And so that's what Miles of Freedom does. When I was fully exonerated in 2012, there's a compensation that's allotted to people that's wrongfully incarcerated. Well, the money didn't bring my dad back. The money didn't give me my college years back that was taken from me. And I sat down and I was like, God, how can $1 million save 1 million lives? That's what I got. I got $1 million for 15 years. And I was like, how can that happen? The concept of Miles of Freedom comes to formation. And Miles of Freedom's mission is to provide holistic services for individuals, families, and communities impacted by incarceration. We believe that reentry is more than just helping the person coming home from prison, because the family dynamic has been broken apart. Right. I got back out. I moved back to South Dallas. It looked like South Dallas had been in prison. Mm-hmm. I'm just serious. Because we have these underserved areas where the system funnels people in, and I go back to South Dallas, I'm like, wow. And so that even discouraged me more, right? Mm-hmm. And so 10 years in, we work with over 1,600 men and women returning home from prison, assisting them from everything from securing their ID to securing employment. We work with North Texas Food Bank. We kicked off a food lunch in 2019. We've distributed over 1 million pounds of food, which was very critical during COVID. We're talking about pivots and shifts. A lot of businesses shut down during COVID, so our food distribution shifted to a drive-through. And we serve anybody. It's no zip code restriction, no income restriction. We serve you if you need food, period, right? Another thing about Miles of Freedom is really getting people back to work. So when you come out of prison, a lot of people are skeptical of hiring you. You don't have a resume. Well, we have a lawn service, and we have lawn contracts, and we're able to load you on our lawn service to provide resources for you, money, because when you get out of prison, that's the first thing you need, money. Child support, parole fees, wherever you staying at. And when you can't get a job and you need money, you're going to resort back to the thing that brought you money.
Yeah, right.
Wait, you got to pay parole fees?
Oh, yeah.
You got to pay when you get out. They're like, hey, you're getting out, but by the way.
You have to pay. You have to pay your, and they don't do it anymore, but they used to violate you for not paying your parole fees. Well, if the system is not putting me in a position to get a job,
right,
and the obligation is for me to pay the system when I get out, then shouldn't the system be a part of me maintaining employment?
Well, the system, we already know. I mean,
True.
It's not there to,
right.
They're not rehabilitating people. They're not helping people. They're not changing people. They're making people worse.
Right.
I mean, whether you were innocent or guilty, by the time you come out, a lot of times most people are worse, and they go through this cycle because of the things that you're describing.
Yes.
I have several people I can, name off in my life that have been in and out, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And because they get back to the same cycles, right? When they get out, they get hanging around with the same people. They start doing some of the same things they were doing.
Right.
But I love the impact that you're making such a massive impact. Tell us about the Ban the Box. Well, tell us the audience, what is Ban the Box? Yeah. What is it, and is it good enough, and is it working?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of legislative moves as it relates to criminal justice reform, prison reform, really opening up the door for people that have felony backgrounds to get jobs. And so one of the initiatives that came up a couple of years ago was the Ban the Box initiative. And when you look at a job application, you see the box where it says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Mm-hmm. Right? And once you check this box with full integrity, the chances of you potentially getting an interview drops.
Oh, yeah.
Considerably.
Yeah.
The minute you check it. And so it's very discouraging, and sometimes people would lie, and then they will get the job, and then the employer will find out. And even though they was a good worker, because you lied right here, they took your job. And so the initiative was moved, and they took that question off. And while it was a very progressive move, people have to understand that you still have a gap in work history.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So even if you take
you still might have a background check.
But you don't have no record of work. Mm-hmm. And so you don't check the box, but you don't have work history either.
Yeah, like where have you been the last 17 and a half
years? So now you got to explain.
You got to explain the beeper.
Right. I got to explain the beeper.
Like, listen,
this is all they gave me.
This is what it is.
And so I think that it's important for people coming home from prison to understand that everything you did in prison is transferable out here. Transferable
that's
skill
good.
sets. It doesn't matter if you work for this system for free. If you was a janitor in prison, then when you get out, put a janitor on your application out here. Tell them you work for the Texas Department of Corrections. You did, you just didn't get paid.
That's
I'm
right.
just saying.
Yep.
You know, and so we got to
Right,
realize that
right.
people do have work skill histories coming out of prison. How can we make sure that their resumes are just as robust and intriguing and engaging as the person that's been out here? That's where we really try to push the needle, even beyond the Ban the Box initiative.
Have you met Sherry Garcia?
With Cornbread Hustle?
Yeah.
Cornbread.
We've crossed paths. I haven't met her personally, but we follow each other on LinkedIn.
I'm gonna get you connected. Don't worry
yes.
about that. I'll make sure you guys get connected because she's got Cornbread Hustle is a recruiting, staffing and recruiting
Yes.
for a second
Better
chance
here.
for people with felons and things like that. And
Yes.
What about companies, right?
Yeah.
Are you guys, is Miles of Freedom or the work that you guys are doing engaging with employers too, like helping educate them on the benefits
Yes.
of hiring some of these folks?
Most definitely. Most employers, like when I got my job at the Hilton Garden Inn, in 2019, the work opportunity tax credits came out. And basically what that is, that incentivizes employers to hire individuals that they might not normally want to hire. A person with a background, a person that's on TANF, any kind of blemish that you feel like might not be a good employer, there's tax credits. You know, interestingly, if you hire an individual and they work a minimum of 120 hours, it's like a 20 to 25% tax credit, you know, break that you can get. If that person works 400 hours, now you're at about 40%. And so there's an incentive there for hiring individuals that are not hireable or that you would look over. And the other thing I think that,
Is that federal or is that state?
so it's a federal law that's passed, but you do have like states. So a lot of state companies do it. You know, Hilton Garden Inn, the hospitality is great. The
Okay.
warehouse is great. What we like to do is not only connect our members, and we refer to them as members because we try to change the narrative. When you're talking about people coming home from prison, I don't refer to people as ex-convicts because, you know, he that is in Christ is a new creature. Old things are passed away, behold, all things have become new.
Yeah.
Right? And so if you're coming out and you say that you are a different person, I'm not going to refer to you from where you came from
That's right.
because that's keeping you where you was. You're not an ex. No, you're out.
That's putting you back in the box.
You're putting you back in the box. You are a potential employer. You're a potential employee, right?
plus you've paid your debt, right?
You paid your
You've
debt.
paid your debt. It's paid.
You paid your debt. I mean, you've done this time. You think of the movie Shawshank Redemption.
Oh my gosh, love that movie.
One of the most context-rich films out there, and you have the man that did all the time and got out, and society had left him.
Yep.
I just told you about a guy that did 30 years. That stuff is like real. I did 15 years. And so when you
Yeah.
get out, you know, we want an opportunity
Right.
to show not only ourselves, but show the community, show our family that we are a better person. But, you know, a lot of times to get out and, you know, you got to go to McDonald's and that's making, you know, $8 an hour. And you know, you can barely make ends meet.
Well, and on that note, so I want to ask you about that because you started a business,
Yes.
right? You've got, and it's your mission. Obviously, it's ingrained.
Yes.
But why did you start a business? Is it because the opportunity was so lacking? Do you train? Do you talk to people about, hey, listen, you may want to just be an entrepreneur. You may want to hire yourself because, right?
Yes. And that's why we did it, because of that
Yeah.
particular gap, because of that particular space, you know. And the other thing is, I feel like even though I was wrongfully incarcerated, I think my story can open doors for other people.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's
Richard, the whole
that's a
time
mic
you were
drop.
talking.
Yeah.
Now I'm a PK, right?
yes,
So,
me too.
I'm seeing God open these doors. As you were explaining your journey, I was seeing God. You were saying certain people, and I'm like, And then look now. It took some toil.
Yeah.
It took some time, but now,
Yeah.
the impact.
Yes, yes, yes. To that point, when I went to prison, I got found guilty, gave me 60 years. I'm on this bunk in Loose Steric, and I asked God. I said, "Man, what's going on?" And the only thing that came to me was the Joseph story. Now,
Okay,
growing
okay.
up, you go to Sunday school, you hear Joseph over and over again,
Okay.
but it's a historical writing. It doesn't manifest right now. It's not real time until you're really in that time, right? And so, Trevor, it comes to me, but the manifestation of the Joseph story didn't appear until 2020. We were at the Park South YMCA during a distribution, and I was watching our team help the community, putting all this food in these cars, and the Joseph story came because it was 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And Joseph had to be in position at the right time to be used not only for his family, but for a nation, for a community, those individuals that are returning home from prison. And so, yes, Trevor, I made this turn in my life, not knowing what a nonprofit really was, but I had the resources. They gave me the money. I can go off and go to Hawaii every month or something like that, but what about the people that's still in prison? What about the people that's coming home? How can we really move towards a more perfect or a better criminal justice system? I refer to our system as a criminal legal system because legally, everything that was done to me was right, except for they had the wrong person. A murder happened, an APB went out, a suspect was arrested, he was interrogated, they gave him an attorney, he went to jury trial, a jury heard him, found him guilty, we're legal, no, I'm innocent. So there's no justice.
Right.
If we want a criminal justice system, we have to make sure that we're pursuing justice, not only during incarceration, but post-incarceration as well.
Yeah, that's
That's a mic drop for sure, for sure. Listen, I just got to tell you that, one of the things that I hear, and I just see this calling and obviously purpose, right?
Yeah.
On your life,
Yeah.
and you're going to do amazing things, and I mean, you already are doing amazing things.
That's right.
Keep it up. I've got, I have a background, I have a background. I'm lucky. I was a juvenile.
Yes.
I was crazy, stupid juvenile.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I'm super lucky that I don't have to check that box.
Yes.
Because it's like, you can't see it.
Yes.
You feel me?
Yes.
But it's there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I've got family members and I got people that I know that they have an adult record.
Right.
And so they'll go work and they'll get that low paying job that they can get through the background check.
Staying under the radar.
Stay under the radar.
Yeah.
And they'll work hard.
Yes.
Super grateful,
Yes.
work hard, get elevated, get promotion. And during that promotion, they do a background check.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're being elevated and then you're being fired all in the same day.
All at the same time. Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And we find that with
How demoting is that? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I see it with my family all the time, man.
And sometimes, I love temp agencies. They're great, but some of them have that window where you can work temp, but that's it.
Not
If you
temp
try
to
to go,
hire.
if you try to be hired by us, now there's different qualifications. So if I can work for you for temp, why can't I work for you? Prime example, we had one job on Cofield unit that paid people. And when they came, the going salary started at, the going wage started at like 25 cents an hour. And I think it was up to like $4. Now this is in the 2000s. This wasn't back in the 40s or 50s. This was the 2000s. But the reality is this particular company had all of these individuals working for them at that rate in prison. But when they got out, they didn't hire felons. They didn't hire people that came from prison. So you can work for these people, work for these companies in these institutions for free, or in these institutions at prorated amounts. But these same companies On this side,
double
are you
standard.
hiring double standards? Are you hiring people that have backgrounds?
That's messed up, man. That's messed up.
You know, but it's the reality in which we have to be in, and how do we address it? Opportunities like this.
Yeah, opportunities to get the message out, like
get it out.
awareness. You know what I'm saying?
That's
Because
it.
a lot of people don't think about this stuff.
Right. And
Right.
they don't. And had I not went through it the way I went through it, I would not have. I mean, my dad was a disabled veteran. We grew up in a time where stranger danger, and you respect the police officer, and
Yes, sir.
all of those
Yes, sir.
types of, you know. And so my dad felt like that the system was going to do us justice, and it didn't. But because of that, we're fighting for justice.
I love it. Well, I mean, I love the mission that you're on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you being here. And I want to give the audience an opportunity to speak to you. If somebody has a question or maybe something that you'd like to comment on. All right, we got it right here. Perfect.
Thank you for the grace that you have with the story and your mission. The question that I have for you is one of how do you get through the rage and the pain?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I know you have faith, so that's part of it. But
Yes.
there's also the human side of it. So how did you do that?
It was time. It really took time. I experienced every emotion under the sun, from wanting to take my own life because I felt all the value had been stripped away from me. Upset with my mom because they didn't put the house up, you know, didn't put the car up. But it gets to a point, one of my exonerated brothers always says, he says, an angry man can't fight.
Oh, wow.
Every day we get up, it's a fight. And you cannot fight angry. And so we choose the emotions that we rest in.
Okay.
Every emotion that we
Okay.
are in, we choose anger. We choose suicide. We choose those. And so it was just incumbent upon me to always choose the right emotions to rest in. And lastly, my mom challenged me very early on in my prison time, and she come to visit me one day, and she was like, Richard, when you look out of the window, what do you see? I'm like, what do you mean what I see? I see the guard tower, I see the barbed wire, I see the men playing on the rec yard. And she said, next time you look out the window, look up. Because a lot of times situations may not change, but can we change our perception
Okay.
in the situation? Can we begin to look at something else? And so I began to look up. And then my next challenge, so to answer your question, it's how we feel about ourselves, our perception, and then what are we saying? I did 11 years in prison, and I worked in the infirmary. And every morning that they would come in, they would say, good morning. And my response was, all right, all right, all right. It was like this real hard. All right. And so the lady was like, one day she asked me, she pulled my coattail. She said, Richard, every morning we say good morning. Why don't you say good morning back? And it was the first time that I had thought, you don't say good morning in prison. When you wake up, it's just another day. You wake up, you look at your cellie, and you say, you all right? And your response is, I'm all right. I'm all right. And so the next day when they came in, she challenged me. She said, good morning, Richard. And through gritted teeth, I said, good morning. But in that articulation, I thought about the morning is good irregardless of my day. That's the key.
Oh, okay.
As long as we acknowledge the Creator, the good morning, the sun came up, the birds are out. I may be having a crappy day, but if I can give honor to whom honor is due,
Uh-oh.
then I'm going to be okay. And so that was my testimony.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Richard, I swear I could talk to you and we're going to get to talk to you more actually. So, cause we got the after party coming. So
Yes,
I'm
yes.
super excited about this. So, but I want to do something real quick. Can everybody pull out your phones real quick? We're going to take a picture. We're going to take that. And if you're online watching us, I want you to take a screenshot. Make sure you go ahead and post this online. Tell him something that you learned from today's episode, right? I want his notifications going crazy, going off the hook. And Richard, man, I just got to tell you guys, can I get a warm round of applause for Richard?
Thanks for watching the Who You Know Job Networking Show. And a very special thank you to our co-host and guests for joining today's episode.